Mr. Kuwata says that he was originally a person who could not see ghosts or spiritual entities at all. He was like that for nearly 20 years, but after a certain event, he began to see such things more often, and now he can see to the extent that he needs more than the fingers of both hands to count the number of frightening experiences he's had. Mr. Kuwata said, "Well, the opportunity for a person who cannot see to become a person who can see really comes out of the blue." This is a story from when Mr. Kuwata was still in high school. There was an abandoned house in the neighborhood of his house. It used to be a candy store for kids, but the time he was born, it had long been abandoned. According to what his parents told him, the candy store used to be a regular hangout for children. Why won't it be? Cheap candies for everyone who would use their allowances for some sweets to hang out with friends. It was run by an old-fashioned, rather bossy lady who was usually kind and cheerful, but would scold children if she saw any misbehavior. She used to say, "I think all the children who come to the store are my grandchildren." The lady was like a second grandmother to all the kids, even though they feared her as a demon hag when she got angry. Unfortunately, she did not live to see her passing as everyone's grandma. It all started when she caught a shoplifter. The store was frequented by girls, so it carried children's accessories such as bracelets made out of beads or shiny stickers that girls can put on their ears. One day, the old lady noticed that the number of items did not add up to her sale. She immediately suspected that the items had been shoplifted, and right after, a group of girls came to her and told that Asuka-chan had stolen the necklace and was bragging about it. The old lady was furious and yelled at the girl in question, who later came to the store. Of course, the old woman must have been very sad and angry at the betrayal, as she had loved the kids as if they were her own grandchildren. However, if the girl had honestly admitted and apologized, she would have forgiven her, was the comment made by Mr. Kuwata's mother. The girl in question cried in front of the angry old woman and screamed, "I didn't steal it! It wasn't me! I didn't steal it! I didn't steal it!" The girl's complaint was just fuel to the fire. So the old lady called her school and told her homeroom teacher and the principal. She verbally abused the sobbing girl in front of them and asked her what was going on with their education and common manners. Finally, she called her parents and told them not to come to her store again, and finally the old lady's rage seemed to stop. But that was just the beginning for the girl who had been accused of and yelled at so much. Her parents cried, and her teacher called her out for being a problem child. She was called a criminal by her classmates, and even from lower grades, and no one would listen to her side of the story. It was too hard for a small child to endure. The girl died a few days later, jumping off a pedestrian bridge near the school onto the street. The old lady, who had cooled down from her raging anger by then, was shocked to hear the news. But after yelling and cursing so much, she couldn't say she may have said too much now, could she? Whenever someone brought up the subject, the old lady would swear at them, saying that they deserved to die, or that it was cowardly of them to run away. One day, however, she learned that she made a terrible mistake. That day, a father and mother came into the store. Sandwiched between the stern-faced parents was a familiar face in the middle, with a swollen face and tears in her eyes. It was one of the girls who had told the police about the shoplifter. The mother of the girl, with an apologetic look on her face, uttered words that the old woman could not believe. "Actually, that shoplifting wasn't done by Asuka-chan who committed suicide. It was my daughter." Asuka-chan was a pretty girl with a pretty face, so it seems she was envied a lot by people, especially by girls. So they tried to frame her for shoplifting, and everyone put on a show. Mr. Kuwata remembers her mother saying this in a disgusted tone. As is the way of the world, the old woman was bashed as a demon who had sent an innocent girl to her death. Even the children who would always visit her, whom she cherished like grandchildren, called her a murderer and threw stones into her store. Parents who didn't like the old lady's behavior called to protest, and the school told their students not to go to the store because it was owned by a problematic person. Then, to top it all off, a group of young thugs who were like gangsters who had heard the story trashed the shop and completely destroyed it. The old lady was completely overwhelmed, both physically and mentally. The old woman's sister, or older sister, who came from far away after hearing the commotion, found her body hanging dead, and her dream of being everyone's grandma was quietly crushed. The sister found the body of her dead sibling, who had hung herself. There was a suicide note that said, "I couldn't think of any way else to atone my sin. Please forgive me." That's why even delinquents who want to test their courage don't go near there. Don't try to do anything stupid, because you'll be punished. My mother used to tell Mr. Kuwata, but at that time, him and his friends had already decided that they were going to test their courage at the abandoned candy store. At that time, Mr. Kuwata was a senior in high school. He had already decided on his future plans, whether it was to go on to higher education or to find a job, and all he wanted to do was to have fun without thinking about anything else one last time. He was treading on a dangerous tightrope that could have ruined his career path if he had been accused of trespassing, but students are stupid, and at the time he did not pay any attention to things like that. It was an ideal haunted location with anecdotes of human deaths located within their own radius in their lives, and where they could just run and get out of the way if something happened. The abandoned candy store was the perfect place in every sense. When Mr. Kuwata told his friends what his mother had told him, they were all excited, saying, "That just holds up the theory that the place is cursed." The date of the dare was set, and the day quickly arrived. "It's really atmospheric at night, isn't it? Do you feel something, Itagaki?" "Yeah, I can feel it." "Ah, there's the old lady beckoning to us right now." "It's definitely not true. That was bull." There were about 5 people, including Mr. Kuwata, headed for the place, and a kid named Itagaki was among them. Itagaki has always claimed to be psychic, and in fact, when a picture was taken with him, someone's hands or feet would disappear, or even though the picture was taken outdoors with no wind, it was covered with orbs and other unexplainable things like that often happened. Still, everyone was skeptical about Itagaki's abilities, but since they were going to test their courage, they had to have an expert. So they invited Itagaki, who gladly accepted the invitation. That's roughly how it went. Itagaki was a good-natured guy, and the place naturally gets more lively when he's around. However, as soon as Itagaki entered the grounds, he suddenly became quiet. For a while, Mr. Kuwata and the others thought, "Wow, it's really a candy store. The old toys and stuff are still here. It's amazing." They were exploring the area, more in admiration than fear, when one of them noticed a strangely quiet Itagaki and asked him what was wrong. Then Itagaki, with a rather grim expression on his face, said, "Do you guys hear that strange sound? It's been there since a while ago." "Sound?" "Yeah, something like a creak, creak, creak sound. Itagaki's comment made the air of Mr. Quada and the others, who were in a somewhat upbeat mood, become serious. The sound Itagaki reminded them of the word for hanging. Where are you hearing that sound from? I don't hear anything. Maybe it's in the back. In the back. Not as at candy store, but as the home of an old woman who committed suicide. There was a creaking noise coming from there. Itagaki's words were enough to send chills down the spines of the youngsters. But then again, there are people who are not afraid of anything. Okay, let's go further in. Tanaka, the leader of the group, was not so intimidated, but instead began to move forward with glee. He said, Hey, hey, hey! We came to see a ghost, didn't we? Let's go see the old lady's face. Mr. Quada and the others reluctantly decided to go on onward, though they were not sure if they were there to see ghosts or not. However, since Tanaka, who had set the atmosphere, was leading the way, their fear was not so strong. Ah! One of them stopped, and Mr. Quada also stopped at the exact same time. He said, Yes, I can hear you now. I can still hear it. Oh my God, this is so weird. Shh. Shh. The sound certainly tapped the earlobes of Mr. Quada and the others. No, maybe I should say it started hitting their ears. The sound was more annoying and insistent, and it was impossible to miss it. Why had such a loud sound not been heard earlier? This question made Mr. Quada and the others very uneasy, but Tanaka kept moving forward without regard to such questions. You guys serious, or have I lost it? I still can't hear a thing. Mr. Quada didn't have the energy to answer his question. He didn't want to hear this sound either. Even the energy to complain was swallowed up by great fear and uncontrollable anxiety. The sound gradually got closer and closer. Eventually, "Oh," said Tanaka, stopping in his tracks. "Sounds like this place, doesn't it? Suicide site." Wow. In contrast to Tanaka, who was still optimistic, Itagaki had a scowl on his face and seemed sincerely displeased. By then, Mr. Quada himself must have had the same expression on his face. A creak, creak. The sound, which had not stopped yet, was certainly coming from inside the room in front of them. In the yellowed and cobwebbed sliding door, which probably led to the bedroom, where there had been a sinister incident in the past, it was already obvious, without even needing to think about it. No, this is the place. This room is definitely not good, said Itagaki, who had been eager for the test of courage itself, now turned pale and shook his head. The fact that he often is as fearless as Tanaka confirms that it's a bad idea to try to expose the room in front of him. But to Tanaka, who still could not hear or sense anything, it all seemed to be a trick played by everyone but him. "I'm sorry for disturbing you," he shouted, and Tanaka opened the sliding door. The next moment, Mr. Quada, Itagaki, the others, and Tanaka all screamed in unison. They all turned on their heels and started running, still shrieking. Ah! Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no! That was seriously bad! The path through the old house was narrow, and if they didn't yield to each other, they would have ended up in a squeeze-tight situation. But they didn't care, and Mr. Quada and the others headed for the exit as fast as they could. They wanted to get away from the bedroom as soon as possible, even a minute or a second, and further than anyone else. What they found in the bedroom was exactly what they had expected. An old woman hanging from the ceiling, swinging from side to side. The deafening sound was accompanied by the pendulum-like movement of the old woman's body. Her eyes were vacant and clouded, and her mouth was gaping open. All of them were sure that they would never forget that fearful corpse. "I honestly don't remember much after that," says Mr. Quata. "They ran out of the candy store like fleeing dogs and found themselves tumbling into Tanaka's house. For a while, everyone was quiet in Tanaka's room, but as time went by, that fear faded," he says. After a while, when the terror ebbed away, the joy of having had the horrifying experience they had hoped for began to overtake them. What an experience to share. "I was like, oh no, that was bad. Ghosts really exist, huh? I won't be forgetting that old lady's face for a while. Jeez." After all of them, except Itagaki, were not psychic. Naturally, Mr. Quada and the others had no recollection of such a bizarre experience. Of course they were scared at the moment and immediately afterward, but they were back to their normal selves once the experience was over. Everyone, including Mr. Quata, was in a victorious mood, but only Itagaki, who had a psychic sense, was shaking with a pale face the whole time. Mr. Quata said to him, "You should cheer up too. You see things like that on a daily basis, don't you?" Then Itagaki quietly began to talk. "Did you guys really look inside that room?" Tanaka replied to the blue-faced Itagaki, I saw it. That's why we all ran away, huh?" "Just the old lady?" "What about the old lady?" Itagaki's next words immediately made us quiet. "You guys only saw the lady?" "What?" When someone said that, Itagaki shook his head. Then, with a tremble in his voice, he said, "I saw the old lady's hanging body." He continued, "You know, while watching the hanging old lady, there was a girl who was laughing hysterically, pointing at the body, clapping her hands, sitting on the floor in that same room." Mr. Quata and the others did not see it. They may or may not have noticed or seen it, but there is no way to be sure. Even Itagaki, who has a strong psychic sense, did not notice the clapping and cheering sound at all until they had opened the sliding door. "I've never seen such an eerie thing. I'll never test my courage again, never," he said, still shaking. The ruin of the shop is still there today. Nobody knows if they're going to demolish it or not.